Part 65. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 641. Trafalgar Law said at this time, don't talk about this kind of thing for now. Since you are the son of Lord Orgrim and a member of the Warhammer Pirates, then we are not enemies. Your injury's very serious. I am a doctor, if possible, let me. Ah, no need. Andrest waved his hand and said. Well, don't trust it? That's true, after all, it's me, Trafalgar Law said, slightly embarrassed. Neiman smiled, reached out and rubbed Trafalgar Law's head, and said, it's not a question of trust or distrust, it's that this kid's injury is not as serious as you think. For ordinary people, his fatal injury is nothing more than a minor injury to him. Andrest grinned and said, yes, I am a member of the Cashgrow family. Cashgrow, yes, you, could it be that he inherited Lord Orgrim's physique? Trafalgar Law asked quickly. Certainly, Andrest said with a smile. Neiman said with some emotion, at this time I really didn't expect to meet you in Bihai, Ludo. Trafalgar Law's expression was a bit complicated, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how to say it. Young master, are you okay, young master? Trafalgar Law asked. After all, Doflamingo had no grudge against him. Mr. Corazon did not die, but he betrayed the Navy and the Don Quixote family because of himself. Doflamingo did not kill Mr. Corazon, which was already very tolerant. According to the Navy, Mr. Corazon was finally imprisoned in the Impelton. In short, Trafalgar Law does not resent Doflamingo, but he understands that if it were not for Doflamingo, he would have died long ago. Doflamingo taught him many things, such as domineering and how to survive in this dark world. Neiman smiled and said, he is doing very well. He eats well, drinks well, and sleeps well. Trafalgar Law knew that Doflamingo must be fine. It's a big deal, otherwise it would have been in the newspapers long ago. But for some reason, after hearing it from Neiman's mouth, she seemed to feel more relieved. That's good, Trafalgar Law smiled and said. Do you know why I recognized you at first sight? Neiman suddenly asked. Trafalgar Law was stunned for a moment, and asked a little strangely, why? Yes, logically speaking, I have been kicked out of the Don Quixote family for so many years, and I have never met Lord Neiman. The most important thing is that I have also changed from a little kid to the adult I am now. His appearance. Master Neiman, how did you recognize yourself? Neiman had a gentle smile on her lips and said softly, in Dover's study, there are many photos of you, with you, and the photo of Rossi Nandi also shows you growing up alone in Bihai. Although that guy doesn't say anything on the surface, in fact, he often pays attention to you secretly. Ha 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 ha, people from the Germa kingdom will give you advice from time to time. He reports some information about you. Trafalgar Law was stunned here, and after a while, there was a tear in his eyes. He thought that after the young master drove him away, he would never pay attention to him again. Unexpectedly, the young master was still paying attention to him secretly. Although Lady Neiman didn't say anything more, Trafalgar Law had already figured out a lot in her heart. In Bihai, although he was mixed up in darkness and evil, he was an unscrupulous black doctor. He experienced many difficulties and dangers and gradually grew up to what he is now. But a few times, the kind of danger that could obviously take away one's future disappeared inexplicably. The big forces that I have offended always encounter some trouble more or less in the process of chasing me, and then nothing happens. Before, he thought he was lucky, but now, he heard Master Neiman's words, even if he didn't say anything clearly. But he also understood that it was the young master and the care of the young master. Damn it, I am still so incompetent, I will cause trouble to the young master, Trafalgar Law said with shame. For Dover, it may not be a problem, Neiman laughed and said. After a slight pause, Neiman said again, okay, anyway, we have met, why don't we go back to the ship first, you guys, this can be considered as acquaintance without fighting. Andrest was wrapping the gauze he carried around his wound at this time, listening to these words and said, "Are you done talking? Okay, let's go back to the boat together. What the hell, Lugo is here." Trafalgar Law, Lugo repeated somewhat unhappily. "Ah, yes, Trafalgar Law," Andrest responded with a smile. A few hours later, on Neiman's ship. At this time, Andrest was sitting cross-legged on the deck, holding a green devil fruit in his hand. With his legs there was a devil fruit illustrated book on the boat. He was flipping through it carefully, trying to find the devil fruit illustrated book. After a while, Trafalgar Law also walked out of the cabin. He saw that he was flipping through the book. After Andrest in the illustrated book, he walked up slowly. "Finished?" Andrest asked without looking back. "Well, why don't you go get something to eat?" Trafalgar Law asked. "Ha ha ha ha, no need, I'm not hungry at all," Andrest laughed. Trafalgar Law didn't say anything more when he saw this. "Have you found it? What kind of devil fruit is this?" asked Trafalgar Law. "Not yet. There are all kinds of strange devil fruits. I have to check them one by one," Andrest said without raising his head. "According to my information, this is a superhuman type, healing fruit," Trafalgar Law said softly. Andrest suddenly raised his head and asked in surprise, "Do you know what devil fruit this is?" "Of course, it's you don't know what kind of devil fruit this is, so it's weird that you still try your best to grab it, right?" Trafalgar Law couldn't help but complained. "This is my goal in coming to be high, right? Moreover, no matter what kind of devil fruit it is, I don't need to fight hard to grab it. The reason why I fight hard is just because I don't want to lose. It has nothing to do with devil fruit or anything like that," Andrest said without hesitation. Trafalgar Law was stunned for a moment. "Damn it, what you said makes so much sense, I'm speechless. Indeed, unlike a poor person like me, Andrest is the young prince of the Warhammer pirates, the son of the strongest man in the world. He has no shortage of devil fruits or anything like that. There is no need to fight for it at all." "Do you have such a strong desire to win?" Trafalgar Law whispered softly. "Well, after all, when you enjoy something, you also have to bear something. I enjoy the Warhammer pirates, and everything my father brought me, naturally I have to bear it all. For example, the face of the Kazgarot family, the Warhammer pirates with such a face. It is the first time to go to sea and fight with life and death. How can you be afraid? How can you lose?" Andrest said very reasonably. "It's not easy for you either," Trafalgar Law nodded and said. "Just so, I am much luckier than most people in the sea," Andrest grinned. After a slight pause, he said curiously, "You are a doctor, this is a healing fruit, so you really want to get this ability. If I don't want to, why should I come and grab it?" Trafalgar Law nodded and said. "Yeah," Andrest reached out and touched his chin, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, Andrest asked, "If you don't mind, you can tell me why you were kicked out in the first place. Is there a Don Quixote family?" Trafalgar Law was silent for a moment, and then said, "This matter is a long story. Do you really have the patience to listen?" "Certainly," Andrest smiled and said. Well, I was born in the North Sea, in Provence. At that time, Provence had not yet been destroyed. Everything here was prosperous. My parents are doctors, and I have a lovely sister." Trafalgar Law tells his story. Andrest continued to flip through the devil fruit illustrated book while listening to the story of Trafalgar Law. From time to time, I would interrupt and ask a few questions. Although Trafalgar Law was a little unhappy, he still explained it clearly to him. Found it after a long time, Andrest finally found the relevant information in the devil fruit illustrated book. After comparing it, he continued, "Sure enough, this is the healing fruit you mentioned. Let me take a look. Oh, it's amazing, this ability, in terms of healing alone, it seems to be more powerful than the results of the surgery in your story. The limitations are also relatively large. After all, they are not as good as the fruits of surgery. The fruits of surgery are more technical. The fruits of healing are not very helpful for diseases, but they are more efficient for injuries. That's about it, Trafalgar Law said softly. Andrest nodded, but didn't refute anything. Anyway, he didn't know much about this thing. He closed the Devil Fruit illustrated book and said, "Then, you were kicked out of the Don Quixote family because of the surgery fruit?" "Roughly the same," Trafalgar Law nodded and said. "Ha ha 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 ha, then you are really unlucky. You obviously did nothing wrong, right? Whether you want to snatch the fruit or something else, it was Mr. Corazon who led you to do it. You were still a little brat at that time, and Uncle Dover really wanted to blame you for something like this." Andrest laughed and said. "No. I didn't understand it before, but now I seem to understand it. Perhaps this is Mr. Corazon's last wish. I hope that the young master can lift my shackles and set me free," Trafalgar Law said softly. After a slight pause, he continued, "But, after all, I still became a bad guy, but this is not a shackles and restraints, but me. Make your own choice based on your own will." While Trafalgar Law was saying these words to himself, Andrest suddenly threw the devil fruit to him. After catching the devil fruit in a hurry, Trafalgar Law asked in surprise, "What are you doing? If you want it, I'll give it to you. Anyway, I don't have any use for this ability. I thought it would be some kind of powerful Superman, like my dad, or a powerful phantom beast." Tisk, disappointed Andrest smacked his lips. Indeed, with Andrest's physical fitness, there is no need for this ability at all. Unlike Trafalgar Law, he has no interest in becoming a doctor. Naturally, he is interested in becoming a doctor. There is not much interest in this kind of healing ability. Just when Trafalgar Law was in a daze, Andrest grinned and said, Do you want to meet Doflamingo? Do you want to meet Dr. Nightingale?" Trafalgar Law nodded without hesitation and said, "Isn't this of course? Ha 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 ha, that's good. Although the Don Quixote family will not accept you, I am different. It won't be long before I will form my own pirate group. Do you want to join my pirate team? It just so happens that I don't have a ship's doctor here either," Andrest asked with a smile. "The weather has changed so fast in the past 2 days, and I accidentally caught a cold. I'm feeling dizzy. I originally thought about taking a day off today, but I didn't think it was appropriate. I decided to update 2 chapters. Dear friends, please pay attention to the weather changes and remember to keep warm. I wish you all good health. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates." Author, Zippo. Chapter 642. "Get on your boat." Trafalgar Law was stunned for a moment. "That's right," Andrest nodded, and then said with a smile on his lips, "Uncle Dover promised that Mr. Corazon to let you go free, then he will definitely not go back on his word, so you will never join again. Don Quixote family, and if you want to see Uncle Dover and Dr. Nightingale who taught you medical skills, you don't have many choices. If you can join the Warhammer Pirates, it will definitely be yes, but with your current level, I'm afraid you won't be able to join the Warhammer Pirates. Even if I am my father's son, I have no right to do such a thing, but, I have the power to form my own pirate group, there is no doubt about it, and my pirate group will naturally enter the core of the Warhammer Pirate Group in the future, and my subordinates will also. When you are promoted to a new generation core member of the Warhammer Pirates, no one will have any reason to stop you. By then, won't your wish be fulfilled? Although I don't know much about it, judging from Aunt Neiman's performance towards Trafalgar Law, this guy should be a trustworthy person. He has also fought against Trafalgar Law. Based on his strength alone in terms of swordsmanship, he should be no worse than Trafalgar Law, and may even be stronger. After all, he studied under the first swordsman Mihawk. But in terms of combat experience and the like, he is not as good as Trafalgar Law. Trafalgar Row cannot be compared, so there is a stalemate. But no matter what, Trafalgar Row is the first opponent he is looking forward to meeting, if he can be converted into his companion. That's simply great. Why did Andrest go to sea? One is to hone his strength and experience and evolve from a newbie. The other is to make plans for the future and find companions who suit his own preferences. Especially Trafalgar Row, without a doubt, is the companion after his own heart. This, Trafalgar Law was confused. As he gets older, he has actually been thinking recently about whether to find a way to form a pirate group to go to sea or something. Baha'i, in fact, no longer means much to him. If it weren't for the search for this devil fruit, he might have gone to sea. However, he had no systematic arrangements or thoughts about where to go after going to sea. But Andrest's words gave him a big impact. If, join Andrest's team, that's definitely a good thing. First of all, Andrest is the son of Lord Orgrim. His resources and background are absolutely world-class. Secondly, Lord Orgrim only has a son like Andrest. As long as Andrest doesn't be too useless, Lord Orgrim will definitely make him the future master of the Warhammer Pirates. What's more, I also know that Andrest not only has the Warhammer Pirates behind him, but the Beast Pirates also regard him as their young master. In the sea, I am afraid that there is no one among his peers who is bigger than him and has more potential in the future. Even if Lord Orgrim practiced the trumpet one day, Andrest would still be a serious eldest son. The status will not be easily challenged. Moreover, from the current point of view, although there is not much contact with Andrest, he is definitely not a waste, but also a ruthless person. He is cruel enough to himself. There is no reason why such a person cannot survive in the sea, especially a person with his background and cruelty. The most important thing is that, as Andrest said, once you join him, you can legitimately visit the young master and Dr. Nightingale. Originally, Trafalgar Law had a deep affection for the Don Quixote family and the Warhammer Pirates. Now that I have such a choice, I feel like there is no reason to refuse it. Also, the pirate group I want to form is very powerful. Yamato, Peggyman, Runty, and Lily will all join. It seems that my father has found another powerful navigator for me, but I haven't found one yet. We've met. Now, you are the only doctor I need. In the future, if we are suitable, we can continue to look for new partners. In the future, my pirate group will definitely become the core of the second generation of the Warhammer Pirates, and my friends will become no less than Uncle Beckman and the others, Andrest said again. Trafalgar Law looked at the devil fruit in his hand, and finally smiled and said, "You have said this, what else can I do? There is a reason to refuse. New World Golden City. Orgrim is currently on the top floor of the Black Pearl building. In other words, my trip to Golden City is all over, right? There aren't all those miscellaneous people coming to visit me?" Orgrim asked in a happy mood while sitting on the sofa. Monet, standing next to him, flipped through the schedule in his hand, then nodded and said, "The main meetings are over. After that, there are also requests for meetings from people from other walks of life, such as those in the dark world." Stop, 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 these people are simply not good enough to talk to me. Just leave it to Tetsalo to make arrangements. I don't bother to see them, Orgrim waved his hand and said directly. Monet smiled and said, "Okay, we will arrange it according to your wishes." After a slight pause, Monet continued, "In this case, there will indeed be no other itinerary arrangements." Gee ha 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 ha, then I will be liberated. Orgrim laughed. After laughing, Orgrim said again, "Go and make arrangements. I want to travel." Heading to the Holy Land, Marijoya, to meet the 5 old stars, Monet asked softly. "Yes, those 5 elderly people have invited me for so long, but I didn't even go. It really doesn't fit with my character of respecting the elderly and loving the young." This time I will go drink tea with them, chat, and listen to their stories. Orgrim said with a smile. Okay, I'll go and notify the G-5 Navy. Monet nodded. At this moment, the phone on Orgrim's desk rang. He raised his eyebrows, glanced at it and said, "It's Neiman." Monet quickly picked up the phone. Orgrim asked Neiman, "What's wrong?" Andre grabbed the devil fruit, which is a superhuman healing fruit. Neiman said with a smile. Healing fruit. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. After thinking about it for a while, he remembered that this ability seemed to have been obtained by the little human princess Mansheli in Dressrosa in the original story. Also, he has saved a lot of people. But now, Doflamingo may not have completely lost his conscience, or he may be pursuing a sustainable development path. In short, he is not in Dressrosa, oversqueezes the little humans, and still gives them the wages and benefits that should be paid. The little humans are actually very easy to coax. In short, the two sides are enjoying themselves now, and the cooperation is quite pleasant. Isn't this a princess? Grim didn't know what the situation was. But his ability was gone, and it was in Andrest's hands. Gee, ha 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 ha, is that kid very disappointed? After all, he has no interest in this kind of ability. If you ask me, just eat a natural type. We also have a xiao fruit here, Orgrim laughed. When he first asked about Andrest's fruit, he was not prepared. But now, he already has his own idea. He wants to find a powerful devil fruit or something on the sea. Of course, he is not particularly rigid. If the Warhammer pirates have something great to gain, of course he will be interested. But currently, the Warhammer pirates have many devil fruits, but none that suit Andrest's wishes. The natural type xiao fruit was put into the sea and tens of thousands of people grabbed it, but Andrest was not interested. First of all, he had no interest in the natural type ability. Secondly, when I learned that the burning fruit was Admiral Sakaski's rockberry fruit, I had no idea at all. He doesn't like the burning fruit, but that's not what I want to say. Brother, Andrest has found his first partner, Neiman said with a smile, and there was a sense of relief in her tone. Andrest has many partners, such as Yamato, Runti, Peguin, and so on. But these were all arranged by Orgrim for him. It's not something he found on his own, so now that he has his first partner, it's really gratifying. Oh? Who is it? Orgrim asked with a smile. You may not believe it if you tell me, but this is fate. Do you still remember Trafalgar Law, that kid on Mignon Island? Neiman asked. Trafalgar Law. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, then grinned and said, remember, Dover likes that kid very much. He is a good candidate. In fact, I think this kind of trial is not bad. If Andrest performs well, Neiman thought for a while and then said. If he performs well, it is not impossible to terminate his status as a trainee early. I gained a lot from the trip to the Golden City. The attitude between the various forces has become clearer. In a short time, there will be too much conflict with these people. Orgrim said softly. Andre will be very happy when he hears the news. Ni man was over there and said with a smile. At this moment, there was a sound coming from the elevator behind the screen. No one came out, but Orgrim had already heard who it was, and he isn't she that irritable little loli from his family? Don't worry, Aaron. This place is my territory now. Mr. Chui can only live here temporarily. You're welcome. I asked Monet about his schedule this morning. There's nothing to do today. Yes, Sphinx said carelessly. Sister, I think it's better to apply first, Aaron said in a panicked tone. You didn't even say hello in advance, but came directly to meet Mr. Duzui. You have the qualifications and courage, but I don't. Orgrim was in a good mood today, and he always had a good temper towards his own people. Anyway, he had nothing to do now, so he was not angry at all. First he said hello Aaron. The Sphinx has said so. Don't be polite. Come in. Yes, Master Chui, I'm extremely sorry. Aaron, who had just stepped out of the elevator behind the screen, responded quickly. Then Orgrim said to the phone bug, okay, let Andre do what he wants. If nothing happens, I'll hang up first. Well, by the way, brother, don't let yourself go too far. I've heard everything about you and that female lieutenant general in the Navy, ha ha ha. Neiman smiled, and then quickly hung up the phone. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. Damn it, is there a spy around me? He looked at Monet, who had a confused expression. Probably not Monet, who? So bold? Dare to betray me? Orgrim thought with some doubts in his heart. At this moment, Sphinx walked in carelessly and asked his Neiman's phone bug, why didn't you let me just say a few words to her before hanging up? But it's okay, anyway, I just talked to her on the phone 2 days ago, ha ha ha. As soon as she finished speaking, something seemed wrong in Orgrim's eyes. The Sphinx was startled and looked at Orgrim very warily and said, what are you going to do? You must be right with your big mouth, you dare to betray me, Orgrim shouted and grabbed the Sphinx's arm in his hand. Rogue, let me go, Sphinx said angrily. Before she could react, Orgrim had already lifted the Sphinx up, placed it on his lap, and slapped her on the small buttocks. Damn it, Orgrim, I'm not done with you. I'll shoot you in the head, roared the Sphinx. Say, was it you and Neiman who betrayed me? Orgrim asked wildly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 643. Orgrim was being slapped very comfortably. This refreshing, and still so elastic. Comfortable. But at this moment, Orgrim suddenly froze, and the movements in his hands stopped. Because he saw 2 more figures walking out of the screen. One of them, whom I had just met 2 days ago, was Aaron, but there was not much to say. The other one made Orgrim a little surprised, and for a moment, he was a little confused. Isn't this Nima Ace? Why did Roger's son come to me? Newgate. What do you do for food? This guy Ace is not just a walk-on. Orgrim still has a deep impression of this guy. Except for the fact that at certain moments, Ace behaved a little mentally, or in other words, he was too emotional and ignored the overall situation. Most of the time, the performance is very good, and Orgrim still appreciates and likes this guy. But the problem is, this guy is a real troublemaker. In the final analysis, there are 2 reasons. The first reason is that he is the adopted grandson of the naval hero Garp and another walking troublemaker Monkey D. Luffy's adopted brother. The second reason is that Ace is Roger's son and has the blood of the Pirate King. Once this secret is exposed, it will make the sea boil. However, this surprise only lasted for a moment. As soon as he changed his mind, Orgrim reacted again. It seems that these 2 seemingly troublesome problems are not big problems for him, Orgrim. Garp, there's nothing to be afraid of. Newgate didn't care and took Ace as his son. During those 2 years, Garp didn't go crazy. Of course, Orgrim has nothing to fear. As for Luffy, whether that guy can get out of the East China Sea alive is a question, and it's not a big deal. As for Ace, he has the blood of Roger. This matter is not big or small. Orgrim is still qualified to solve this problem. It is even very possible that even if the world government really finds the secret and discovers this problem, it will help eliminate the secret after weighing it. The sea will never be mentioned again. Just pretend there is no such thing as Roger's bloodline. But at this moment, what was going around in my mind was just instinctive thinking. Orgrim was still very surprised at this time. Why did Ace come to him? At the moment when Orgrim was in a daze, Sphinx also seized the opportunity, put a backhand on Orgrim's leg, and used strength to break free from Orgrim's restraints. When she landed, a revolver hanging on her waist was also caught in her hand. "Damn it, I didn't recruit you, I didn't mess with you, you dare to spank me, or do you want me to save face in front of my little brother? Die, Orgrim, I'll shoot you in the head," the Sphinx cursed loudly. The moment the words fell, there was a bang, and a gun shot towards Orgrim's head without mercy. The bullet with strong kinetic energy hit hard on the forehead. Orgrim's head involuntarily moved back. However, over the years, he has instinctively had the habit of firing iron blocks. Sphinx would not really use this shot. He had some domineering power, so the bullet was directly bounced away by Orgrim. "Hey," Monet chuckled, reached out and grabbed the bullet that bounced off Orgrim's head. Although Aaron had never seen the scene where the Sphinx shot Lord Hammer, as Sphinx's younger brother, he had heard of this kind of thing. "I've always heard Sphinx brag like this before, but I didn't expect it to be true. However, I was somewhat prepared in my heart." Ace was stunned and completely dumbfounded. "Damn it, are the Warhammer pirates so violent?" The captain would arrest the cotters and spank them if they disagreed, and the cotters would shoot the captain in the head if they disagreed. What kind of monster pirate group is this? Whispering sound, Orgrim stretched out his hand to rub his forehead, glared at Sphinx and said, "Think carefully, did you betray me to Neiman?" After hearing this, Sphinx's expression changed. There was a slight change, and the aura on his body shrank a little. He curled his lips and said with some confidence, "I don't even know what you are talking about." "Huh, I won't play with you anymore. I'm angry. I can't coax you farewell." After saying that, the Sphinx ran away in a hurry. It really came in a hurry and left in a hurry. "This bastard Lowly," Orgrim muttered angrily. Monet said with a smile, "Mr. Hammer, this is really ungentlemanly." It made Lord Sphinx angry. "There's no need to talk about being polite or ungraceful with that bastard Lowly, don't worry about her, she must have complained to Stussy." Orgrim waved his hand and said. "Queen Stussy is very good at dealing with sphinxes, and she can make this little Lowly confused in just a few clicks. Orgrim doesn't worry about these problems either." Monet smiled, glanced at Aaron and the handsome but unfamiliar boy, and then said that Mr. Hammer. "Well, go ahead and arrange what I just said. There is no need to follow here." Orgrim nodded and said. "Yes." Monet nodded, responded, and left here quickly. Aaron was also feeling very uncomfortable at this time. "Sister, you brought me here without authorization and ran away without authorization. I was left alone here. It's very embarrassing for Mr. Zui, and a little uneasy." "Mr. Hammer," Aaron called out slightly awkwardly. Orgrim didn't care about anything. He smiled and waved to him. Come on, sit down, and that little guy you brought. Sit down. If you have anything to do, just say it. We are all a family." Seeing that Boss Orgrim didn't feel angry at all, he seemed to be in a good mood. Aaron felt the pressure on his body dissipate instantly, with a smile on his face. He nodded to Ace, then walked to the sofa and sat down. Aaron still knew that Mr. Chui hated people who were coy, so after getting approval, he was not polite. "Ace, this guy is not the kind of person to be coy," so he also sat down. "I must have never seen you, right?" Orgrim picked up the teacup from the table, took a sip, and looked at Ace and asked. Aaron was very conscious. He picked up the teacup and teapot from the table. He didn't need anyone else to serve him. He just took care of himself. Arrangements were made. Hearing this, Ace nodded and said, "Yes, I have never seen him before." While saying this, Ace was also observing Orgrim, the pirate emperor, who is known as the man who stands at the top of this era. He should be no less than the man he has never met. His father, right? It seems that it may even be more powerful than the Pirate King in terms of influence. Ace has never heard of Roger's business that would bring the Admiral to the stand. Just by relying on at this point, Ace can understand how powerful Orgrim's power is. The King of the Night, Hosgarot Orgrim. Before meeting him, Ace had thought a lot about the majesty and power of Orgrim. Domineering and ferocious. He has fantasized about these. But he has never imagined the scene just now, spanking. But I don't know if it's because of just now, or because of Orgrim's tone now. In short, Ace doesn't feel any special pressure now. It turns out that the famous King of the Night seems to be quite easy to get along with in private, Ace thought in his mind. Aaron and Nami didn't seem to be fooling him. Orgrim nodded, and then asked name. Ace, Portkas d Ace, Ace responded softly. But after he said his name, he found that there was an inexplicable look in Orgrim's eyes. What did this mean? D, Orgrim smiled and said. Sure enough, he didn't admit his mistake. Ace's eyes lit up and he asked, do you know what this D means? So, enemy of God, Orgrim smiled and said. However, he had no intention of explaining it. He actually didn't understand this D very well. He seemed to have heard Doflamingo talk about it once. It is related to what happened 800 years ago. He is still quite influential among the Tianlong people and is called the natural enemy of God or something like that. But Orgrim doesn't care at all about this. If you can change the world with just one letter, that's nonsense. In the final analysis, D is nothing more than a will. Who will inherit this will? It has little to do with whether the letter is in the name or not. Orgrim doesn't believe in this. He believes that there will be a C in the future. No matter what it is, the most important thing is to look at people. It all depends on human effort. Does it have anything to do with the name? Seeing that Orgrim had no intention of explaining, Ace also knew the rules and didn't ask anything, suppressing his doubts in his heart. Orgrim then looked at Aaron and asked, so, what's going on? Aaron smiled and quickly explained the cause and effect. That's it, Mr. Hammer, wasn't it that I was in the East China Sea before? This guy came to eat the Overlord meal arrogantly, and then I. As Aaron spoke, Orgrim also smiled. Ace's face had an expression of embarrassment and shame. Gee ha 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 ha, is this really a king's meal? Still got caught? Your luck is really bad, Orgrim laughed. This, Ace looked a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Portkas d Ace, Orgrim murmured again, and then said with a glint in his eyes, is he Garp's grandson? As soon as Orgrim said this, Aaron, who was drinking tea, almost couldn't hold it in and spit out all the tea in his mouth. The matter of Garp having a grandson is a big deal on the sea, at least for Orgrim and the others. It's not a big secret among the levels. It just depends on whether you are interested in asking. Aaron seems to have heard that Garp often runs to the East China Sea, firstly because his hometown is in the East China Sea, and secondly because he has two, the grandson is in the East China Sea. However, Aaron has no interest in Garp's grandson at all, so he didn't even ask. When he met Ace, Ace couldn't even afford to eat. He wanted to eat King's meal, and even called himself a pirate who just went to sea. Normal people wouldn't think of Ace as the grandson of a naval hero like Garp, right? As a result, do you want to be so cheating? I brought the grandson of the naval hero Garp to the Golden City and wanted to recommend it to Mr. Hammer. What the hell is going on? Mr. Hammer, Aaron quickly wanted to apologize. But Orgrim waved his hand and said with a smile, it's nothing, Aaron, it's not a big deal. I just heard about it and asked casually. You don't have to worry about it. Aaron knew that Master Chui was not that big of a deal. A person who does one thing in front of others and another behind his back is not qualified to let Mr. Chui do this. Therefore, whatever Mr. Chui said must be what it was, and he felt a little relieved. I was almost scared to death. Ace also nodded at this time and said yeah. Gee ha 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 ha, interesting, so interesting, Garp's grandson wants to be a pirate, you are such a great family, Orgrim said with a smile. Navy, Revolutionary Army, pirates, you are all alive together. Ace obviously knew something, and scratched his head in embarrassment, not knowing what to say. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 644. Although he made fun of it, Orgrim didn't hold on to it. What happened to Garp's grandson? To be a pirate, there is no threshold required. Is Doflamingo still a celestial dragon? Not only did he become a pirate, but he also became his brother-in-law. Well, I think about it. Doflamingo is a celestial dragon, and he is now my brother-in-law. Rounding things off, am I also a celestial dragon? Well, when you go to Marijoya, you can become relatives with the 5 old stars. After picking up the teacup and taking a sip, Orgrim asked, so, this is what you are doing? Upon seeing this, Aaron quickly responded, that's right, Mr. Hammer, this guy Ace should still be, he has quite a lot of potential and talent, so after I met him, I thought about whether I should keep him and show him to Mr. Chewy, if possible, just to find a future for him or something. Ace heard this and was a little moved in his heart. To be honest, Aaron didn't have any other thoughts at all when he did this. Let's talk about meritorious service. This matter is not something where merit can be seen in a short time. Potential. It takes a certain amount of time to turn into strength. Therefore, Ace also understands very well that Aaron is busy doing this for 2 reasons. The first reason is that it seems that people are really being snatched on the sea now. It's quite nervous. Talents from all walks of life will be targeted as soon as they show up. Aaron may have considered this. The second reason is, as Aaron said, he is interested in himself and cherishes his talent. I want to find a good future for myself. If nothing else, Aaron must not have known his identity before, the grandson of a naval hero or something. As for Roger's son, this is probably even Orgrim. You don't know, right? When he didn't know his identity, Aaron just regarded him as an ordinary kid. For his own sake, he was so busy that if he joined the Warhammer Pirates, he would really skyrocket. It's a rare opportunity. Regardless of whether this matter is important to him or not, Ace still recognizes Aaron's heart and kindness. Well, even if he was forced to wash dishes for half a year. Orgrim nodded when he heard this, then looked at Ace and said, Aaron is right to have this idea, but you may not be the same. As pirates, what do we pursue? Freedom. Maybe something else. More, but the most basic thing is freedom, so the pirate industry also attaches great importance to freedom. As the saying goes, forceful melons are not sweet, and I have no interest in forcing them. Ace, what are your thoughts? Join my Warhammer Pirates. Joining the Warhammer Pirates is as difficult as climbing to the sky. Countless people on Avalon are queuing up to join, but they don't even have the chance. It sounds simple, but it's actually simple. With this way, he got in touch with Mr. Hammer, just said a word, and came in. After all, the captain of the Warhammer Pirates is Orgrim. With or without someone else, can he still make the decision? Ace also knows that maybe at this time, there is a chance to reach the sky in front of him. It was Aaron and the Sphinx who won it for him. If he behaves better and is more obedient, he should be able to join the Warhammer Pirates as a matter of course. Even becoming a trainee crew member is quite good. Who said that a trainee crew member can't become a full-time official? Aaron was looking at Ace with some expectancy at this time. Although Mr. Chewy didn't go to test anything, he seemed to have relaxed a little. Got it, something can be done. But after being silent for a while, Ace said, maybe you are a little arrogant, but I want to challenge you. Gee ha 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 ha, Orgrim laughed. Aaron was also dumbfounded, you really said that? What's the reason? Because I am the strongest in the world? So after meeting you, you can't help but want to challenge it? Orgrim asked a little funny. Ace shook his head without hesitation and said, I will not use such superficial reasons to live up to Mr. Aaron's expectations. As soon as Ace said these words, Orgrim felt a hint of appreciation in his eyes. If you just don't know how high the sky is, then to be honest, that's what Ace is doing. But the reason, sorry, it's a little hard to explain. Ace was silent for a while and then said this again. Orgrim nodded and said softly, a secret? Everyone on the sea has their own secrets. If you don't want to say it, forget it, but I can understand your feelings. Orgrim can roughly understand why Ace wants to challenge himself. Maybe it's to get closer to Roger? He's not interested in revealing Ace's identity or anything. It's too tasteless. He doesn't. If he's willing to say it, forget it. Maybe one day in the future, he'll figure it out, and it's not too late to talk about it again. It's not a big deal anyway. Thank you. Ace nodded and thanked you sincerely. So, you want to challenge me now? To be honest, this can no longer be described as arrogant, you kid, you're still far from it. Orgrim grinned and said with an evil smile. A fire lit up in Ace's heart, as if he wanted to say something. But this time, when he saw Orgrim behind his eyes, his whole body was shocked. Then, an extremely strong shocking force came towards his face, making his thoughts a little confused and sluggish. The pressure, the powerful oppression, was like a tsunami, surging. His forehead instantly seeped out. I broke out in a cold sweat, my heart was beating fiercely, and I couldn't calm down. This feeling was like being blocked by a ferocious beast in a blind corner, with no way out and no way to resist. No, it was even more despairing than this. Just when Ace was pushed to the limit by the strong pressure brought by this look, an inexplicable force began to operate on its own in Ace's body. There was a moment, in an instant, all the pressure was lifted away and washed away. Then, shocking power burst out from Ace's body. Overlord Color, Aaron was sitting next to Ace at this time, and he was the first to feel the power of this impact. He was extremely shocked. Overlord Color? It is said that only one person in a million has the Overlord Color and domineering spirit. The entire Warhammer Pirates, not many people have it, right? Huh. When he thought about this, Aaron was confused. Apart from Mr. Hammer, who else in the Warhammer Pirates has Overlord Haki? It seems that Mr. Beckman has. There should be many cotters who have it, right? I heard from the Sphinx sister that she seems to have one too, but she just hasn't used it much. It's understandable, after all, the Sphinx sister is really iron-headed. She is not afraid of the sky or the earth. She looks like a living little bully. She can have the domineering look of a bully, and there is no sense of surprise at all. But if you think about it carefully, it seems that the bosses of the Warhammer Pirates don't pay much attention to things like Overlord Color. If you have someone who can be a big cotter, or if you don't, you can still be a big cotter. In the final analysis, it seems that it all depends on your strength. The domineering color is just an embellishment. But no matter how the Warhammer Pirates view Overlord Haki, there is still no denying that Overlord Haki is rare and powerful. This may not prove any strength, but it can definitely prove qualifications. Born to be a king. Of course, this does not mean that all possessors of domineering colors are rebellious and unwilling to bow their heads. This qualification, this king, is not judged in this way. How to put it specifically? In short, at least in terms of potential, anyone with Overlord Color and domineering energy will not be bad. Ace has already used this power to prove his potential. Orgrim was not too surprised by Ace's instinctive use of Overlord-colored domineering energy to break away from his own intimidation. After all, he didn't do anything, but there was a little pressure in his eyes. If the Overlord color Haki can't even do this kind of thing, then it's really rubbish. However, in order to prevent the Golden City from being affected, the moment Ace's overlord-colored domineering energy burst out, Orgrim's aura suddenly surged up. Domineering, suppressed, even within this range, I was unable to break out of this big room. Call, 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 Ace gasped. The clothes on his body were all wet with sweat. His overlord-like domineering aura gradually dissipated, and Orgrim's aura was also put away. So strong, Ace couldn't help but whisper. There was no fight, but this kind of power, extreme power, left Ace with no power to resist at all. Even if he is domineering, the man in front of him can be powerful just by relying on his own momentum. Hold him down. In the look in his eyes, he couldn't resist at all. It was so difficult to even move his body and make some movements. Just relying on momentum has already made him unable to move. If he wants to win against himself, he doesn't need to put in any effort at all, right? This is the first time I have encountered this kind of power in my life. This extreme gap made Ace realize one thing very clearly, that is, the gap between him and the world's strongest cannot be measured at all now, let alone crossed. Challenge Orgrim, it's definitely not something that can be done now. It's not what I should do now. Overlord color, not bad strength. This also proves that your kid's qualifications are also very promising. However, this is not the reason why you can challenge me now. Let's practice for a few years. Orgrim smiled and said. Ace swallowed his saliva. This time, he was no longer arrogant and nodded seriously. If that's the case, what else are you going to do? Are you interested in joining the Warhammer Pirates? Become a trainee crew member, what? Orgrim asked with a smile. There was a hint of hesitation between Ace's eyebrows. Seeing this, Orgrim waved his hand and said, okay, since you are hesitant, it means you are confused. That's right, Ace nodded and admitted frankly. The sea has the answer for everyone. If you are confused, go to the sea to find the answer, Ace. Orgrim smiled and said. Ace nodded, but didn't know what to say. Orgrim suddenly thought of something and said, by the way, my son, and dressed. He has already gone to sea. Well, although he is now a trainee crew member with his aunt, he has been performing well recently and the situation on the sea has also eased a little. I think it is time to let him go out to experience. Got it? Ace's expression was a little strange. What do you mean to me about this matter? He is a very nice person. Do you want to be his partner? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. And, your son? Ace asked in surprise. Well, he is much more powerful than you. Although he is Garp's grandson, it seems that the old guy didn't teach you how to use the power of domineering. The overlord color is domineering, but also very rough, Orgrim asked. Well, Grandpa originally planned to wait until I joined the Navy, Ace said a little embarrassed. Gee ha 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 ha, if you want to challenge me, you're still far away. It's not just someone who says they want to challenge me. Then I'll be really busy, Orgrim laughed and said. Ace nodded in confusion. Indeed, with Orgrim's status, it is impossible for him to agree to anyone who wants to challenge him. Then he doesn't have to do anything else, just wait to be challenged all day long. You are no exception. Just now, it was the closest opportunity you had within reach, but you seem to be aware of the gap between us. In the future, I will not give you this kind of opportunity to challenge me casually, AI Sri Lanka, Orgrim said softly. Ace was stunned for a moment, then looked at Orgrim and smiled evilly, and continued, of course, there are no other opportunities. Like, partnering with your son? Ace asked softly. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 645. After being silent for a while, Ace said in a deep voice, let me tell you first, I will not admit anyone weaker than me to be the captain. If your son is weaker than me, even if he is to be my partner, he should let him, I'll be the captain. It makes sense, Orgrim nodded and said with a smile. On the sea, strength speaks for itself after all. Even if Andrest is his own son, he is no exception. But for now, Ace is still a rookie, probably not even as good as Trafalgar Law in the North Sea. After all, Ace has never practiced anything. He comes from a wild background and relies on his qualifications to get some skills. He doesn't have hacky, he doesn't have devil fruit abilities, and there's no systematic training in physical skills. Andrest is definitely 1 or 2 levels better than Ace. It's even a little unbelievable, if you think about it carefully, if Ace really joins Andrest's ship. He would probably be the weakest one on the entire ship at the beginning. I guess even Peggy Wan can't beat him. This is not impossible, on the contrary, it is extremely possible. However, after all, Ace's qualifications are here. If you train him well, he will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Ah, no, there is also Nami, that little girl, who is also planning to arrange it for Andrest. Ace can't even defeat Nami, right? Well, in that case, let me go meet Andrest, your son, and see what makes you proud of being the son of the strongest man in the world. Ace made up his mind. Andrest, son of Husgarot Orgrim. Although I have never met him, he must be a powerful guy. But I am also the son of the Pirate King after all, not anywhere close to going, right? Aaron also looked at Ace a little strangely at this time. I was very emotional. I really don't know how to evaluate the choice Ace made. Call him stupid, but he chose to join His Highness's side. Everyone knows that as long as he can get ahead, his future development potential will definitely be good. Let's just say he's not stupid. The opportunity to join the Warhammer Pirates was clearly right in front of him, but he didn't take it. It could even be said that he declined. But one thing can be confirmed, that is, Ace can be considered one of his own. After half a year of contact, Aaron got to know Ace a little bit. I know that although this guy has many problems, he takes commitment very seriously. Initially, forcing him to wash dishes for half a year became a foregone conclusion and Ace accepted it. There was no thought of escaping or any other messy things. I have been washing dishes honestly for half a year. In this case, you can be considered one of our own from now on, as, well, as an elder, I should give you a greeting gift, Aaron. As Orgrim spoke, he called Aaron. Aaron quickly responded, yes, Mr. Chui. I will leave the Golden City later, and I won't go back to Avalon for the time being. You can take Ace and Nami to Avalon first, and let them get familiar with Runti, Yamato, and the others. They will all be together in the future. The ship's men, then, went to Beckman and asked him to burn the fruit. Orgrim ordered. Burn the fruit. Aaron was a little surprised. Well, it's not a problem to keep it in your hands. Why not turn it into combat power and nourishment and give it to Ace, Orgrim said very grandly. Ace was also surprised at this time. Although he has never been to the sea, he still understands things like devil fruit. Especially his mentally retarded brother turned into a devil inexplicably. After becoming a fruit user, Ace studied these things in detail. He had never come into contact with the Devil Fruit illustrated book, but he already knew almost all the basic information about devil fruits. Naturally, he understood what the burning fruit was. Is a famous and powerful devil fruit in the sea, and it is also a natural devil fruit. What does a natural devil mean? Powerful, rare, the key to the door to the strong. Look, the 3 generals of this generation of the Navy are known as the government's highest combat power card. All 3 of them have powerful natural abilities. The burning fruit is definitely a very valuable devil fruit. And Khazgaro's Orgrim was ready to take it without thinking. Give this thing to yourself. This great gift. Full of sincerity. This, is it too expensive, Ace said quickly. Gee ha 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 ha, it's so expensive, it's just a devil fruit. To me, the Warhammer pirates, it's nothing valuable. This thing can be considered a bargain. After all these years, no one has noticed it? If you are interested, I will give it to you, Orgrim waved his hand and said. Aaron also smiled at this time and said, Ace, don't look at Mr. Hammer and our Warhammer pirates with ordinary eyes. It's just a natural element, nothing like that. Let me tell you quietly, just now that beautiful secretary of Master Chui. What's wrong? Ace looked at Aaron curiously and said. He is also a natural ability user, snow fruit, Aaron smiled and said. Ace was stunned, what the hell? Is there such a thing? This Warhammer pirates, he's so wealthy that any secretary can be equipped with a natural devil fruit? Even though the Swexia fruit is not considered to be the top natural type, it is still a natural type. You can never imagine the happiness of rich people. Ace suddenly thought of this sentence. Damn it, I am still too young. At the same time, Orgrim said again, look who is idle in Avalon, let him teach Ace, give him some permissions for the things in the library. He must treat them in the same way as Runty and the others. Before Andrest goes back, he must improve his strength as much as possible. The same goes for Nami. Yes, Mr. Hammer, Aaron quickly responded. Ace then realized that compared to that devil fruit, what Orgrim just said is obviously more precious. Ace rarely feels this feeling. The feeling of being cared for and valued. In the past, he could only detect this feeling in his grandfather and younger brother. But now, after just meeting him once, Orgrim's trust and generosity towards him made him feel very touched. I will definitely repay you with all this, Orgrim. Even if I really have the opportunity to challenge you and defeat you in the future, I will definitely remember this kindness, Ace said very seriously. Gee ha 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 ha, you are a brat, but you are 10,000 years too early to win against me, Orgrim laughed loudly. After he finished speaking, he was no longer interested in talking to Aaron and Ace. He waved his hand and said, okay, let's arrange it this way. Aaron is also a very sensible person. When he saw this, he knew that Master Chui was not here. The conversation was lively. After taking Ace and saying hello, the two left here. Watching the two people's backs disappear behind the screen, Orgrim picked up the teacup and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the bustling golden city outside. His thoughts immediately went back to the last time he saw Roger nearly 20 years ago in Rogertown. Roger, your son has grown up well and become a handsome young man. He is very energetic. If you knew about this, you would be very happy, right? Ha ha ha, if your son and my son become partners, it's really interesting to think about it, Orgrim whispered to himself softly. Then, with a smile on his lips, he took a sip of tea. Arranged? Orgrim asked suddenly. Then, Monet, a sexy and beautiful figure wearing a black suit, came closer. The arrangements have been made, Master Chui. The G-5 warship is waiting for you at the port and is ready to set off at any time, Monet said softly. Orgrim nodded. He originally wanted to say hello to Stussy and Hancock before leaving. But after thinking about it, it seemed a little inappropriate. After all, this matter, on the surface, it seems that he is on business, going to Marijoa to meet with the 5 old stars to discuss how to cooperate and kill Lord Im and so on. But if we really look inside, Orgrim is I have a short trip to Jun, based on what happened 2 days ago. It's hard not to misunderstand it as a honeymoon. Therefore, Orgrim felt that it was better to keep a low profile on this matter and not say hello to Queen Stussy and the others. Since they did not show up today, they probably guessed that he was leaving today. On purpose not to show up. After all, saying hello is like asking your wife for money before going out to help the beautiful sisters living on the streets. Tet, this is too much. Just pack your luggage and send it to me on the G-5 warship. Don't worry about anything else. I'll go alone. Orgrim thought for a while and then said. Monet smiled slyly, as if he understood something. Seeing that she was smiling so excessively, Orgrim also glared at Monet viciously. Ha ha ha, I'll do it right away. Not only was Monet not afraid, he also laughed provocatively, and quickly ran away while Orgrim was blowing his beard and staring. Looking at Monet's leaving figure, Orgrim reached out and touched his chin, murmuring said, am I too pampered to them? Do you really think that just because she is a beautiful woman, you can do whatever you want? We have to find an opportunity to find a way to deal with them. At the same time, the Navy headquarters Marineford. The warship of the Warring States Marshal has just parked in the port. In fact, the location of Golden City's opening this time is also relatively good. It's so considerate. It's within the gateway waters of the New World, not too far away from the Navy's sphere of influence. Otherwise, Orgrim estimated that Sengoku, the Navy boss, would have to bring a large group of people with him. After all, he should also be worried. What should I do if I worry that Orgrim will go crazy and have to leave him in the Golden City? So before a week has passed, Warring States has already rushed back to the Marine headquarters Marineford from the Golden City. As soon as he opened the door of his office, at the door of the room, Warring States saw a familiar figure. Garp. This hob-meat is old and not repaired. He doesn't know what he is doing. He is sitting on the Marshal's throne, rummaging through a pile of documents on the table. Hey, you bastard, do you want to seek power and usurp the throne? Marshal Warring States scolded with a smile. He really didn't doubt Garp, but he just felt that this bastard was too unreliable. Oh? Came back. That bastard Orgrim didn't do anything to you, did he? Garp asked after glancing at Sengoku. I'm a marshal of the Navy. No matter what he does, he still has to give me some face, the Warring States Marshal said confidently. After a short pause, he asked, what are you looking for? Intelligence, Garp replied, and after a slight pause, he continued, according to Ace's information, that guy said he went to sea to become a pirate. But so far, nothing has happened, and no one has found him. Missing, I'm a little worried. At first, Garp was still waiting for Ace, that bastard, to do something, and then went to catch him. The result was good. After waiting for so long, Ace seemed to have disappeared. There was no movement and no information could be found. Garp panicked. This bastard boy, didn't he just die silently in the sea? Are you looking for the information about Ace from me? Warring States looked at Garp in confusion. What can I find here? Well, in your name, I asked the intelligence department to pay close attention to Ace's movements. If there is any news, I will definitely send it to you as soon as possible, Koputian said shamelessly. Warring States period. In my name? You pretended to pass on the Marshal's military orders, and you said it so openly. Do you want to show off your face? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 646. But seeing the worried look on Garp's face, Sengoku's words were not spoken after all. Instead, he stepped forward, patted Garp on the shoulder, and said comfortingly, it's only half a year, isn't it too long? Don't worry too much, maybe there will be news soon. In this way, I ask people to pay more attention. Hope so, Garp nodded. On the other side, at the port of the Golden City, Orgrim wandered to the G-5 Navy warship. When he raised his eyes, he saw Jun wearing the Navy's cloak of justice, standing on the warship and looking at himself. Orgrim grinned and waved to Jun with a smile, as if I was here. What surprised Orgrim was that Jun really didn't concerned about the looks of the Navy boys around him. He nodded generously to Orgrim, with a smile on his lips. This woman, it's really, really weird, Orgrim muttered, then walked up the ladder, and boarded the Jun warship again after a long absence. Coming. So slow. Jun walked towards Orgrim and said softly. Some things were delayed. Orgrim nodded. After looking around, Orgrim asked, do you feel like you've changed ships? Well, the previous one was sunk, Jun said very calmly. The Navy is really a high-risk profession, Orgrim smiled and said. Still can't compare to you pirates, Jun said with a smile on his lips. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun stepped forward without hesitation, took Orgrim's arm, and led Orgrim inside. To be honest, it's hard for me to adapt to you suddenly becoming so enthusiastic. I always feel like there is some conspiracy. Orgrim scratched his head and said. In the past, Jun had always been cold to him. Even if he had emotions, they were all disgust and hatred. Even that night, when the two of them were having sex, only Yun also seems a little distant. But today, why are you so enthusiastic? Are you trying to deny it by eating everything? Jun asked with a murderous look in his eyes. Orgrim panicked and said quickly, Orgrim, am also a well-known man. How could I do such a dishonorable thing? That's pretty much it, Jun nodded. The rough guys from the G-5 Navy around him looked at their boss, the Navy's famous Flower, the eldest sister of Jun, and looked like they had a close relationship with Orgrim. They felt in their hearts. It's bleeding. Sister, that's a pirate. The most evil pirate in the world today. Where's your justice? What's so good about him? How can I not compare with him? Isn't he just more handsome? Richer, more powerful? I'm crazy, forget it, the more we compare, the more distressing it becomes. Why is the gap between people so big? Those subordinates of yours look like they want to eat me, tisk tisk. Orgrim said with some humor. Jun said nonchalantly, I have already said that from now on, I will not hide my feelings. Whoever wants to see it can go see it. Whoever wants to see it can go see it, just ask, these worldly eyes cannot affect me at all. After finishing speaking, Jun glanced at the surrounding Marines and shouted angrily, what are you looking at? Set sail, target Maragio. Do you want me to hang you on the deck? Yes. Big sister, the G-5 Marines immediately responded excitedly after being scolded by Jun. It was like, what kind of reward is this? Orgrim looked at the scene in surprise, and then he had some evil thoughts in his heart. Said you are only at this level. You can't even imagine the beauty of your eldest sister's head. Jun didn't know the evil thoughts in Orgrim's heart. Holding Orgrim's arm, he walked into the cabin and came to his room. This was also Orgrim's first time here, and he didn't say anything about changing ships. The last time he took the Jun ship, he didn't pay any attention to himself along the way to Jun. On the other hand, those G-5 bastards got along quite well with me, and they even drank together on the way. Orgrim sat on the sofa, while Jun was making tea. He said, what does it feel like to be at the limit? Feel? Orgrim touched his chin, and then thought, have you touched the power of the world? That kind. Orgrim didn't hide anything. He didn't hide anything because of his identity as Jun, and spoke about this feeling in detail. To be honest, his feelings are absolutely precious in anyone's eyes. Because in today's world, I'm afraid he is the only one who has reached this limit. At most, there are just as many Lord I'm, that mysterious old immortal. But these are still unreasonable things. Whether that guy has reached his limit is still unknown. After all, this matter cannot be achieved just by living a long time. Jun also listened very seriously. In the past, it would have been impossible for him to get these feelings and insights from Orgrim's mouth. Even though he was a top master, Orgrim had already surpassed their level. When he said many words, Jun felt like he had a sudden enlightenment. As for hearing about pirates' experiences, she had no shame at all. What's there to be ashamed of? I earned it through my own ability. Being able to catch Orgrim and make him speak is also a skill. That's roughly it. It's still a long journey, so I can tell you in detail. Orgrim smiled, took the teacup from Jun, then raised his eyebrows slightly, and continued evilly, of course, it depends on your sincerity. Sincerity, Jun's pretty eyebrows were also raised. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun leaned over and kissed Orgrim directly. There was no warning or shyness at all, and Orgrim was immediately stunned. Before Orgrim could speak, Jun asked, "Is this kind of sincerity okay?" Orgrim swallowed, nodded, and said, "Okay, okay." I originally thought that Jun would take advantage of the situation and push him back again. But no, in just a moment, Jun restrained his charming aura, sat opposite Orgrim, picked up another cup of tea from the table, and drank it. Orgrim looked carefully and found that there was also a trace of undetectable blush on her face. I'll just say it, I was almost frightened by her. Orgrim thought in his heart. "Marshal, make plans to move the naval headquarters to the New World in the future," Jun suddenly said. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. Is this kind of thing suitable to be said to a pirate like me? Are you really going to surrender to the enemy? Is this such a good thing? Is it appropriate to tell me this kind of thing? Orgrim asked after taking a sip of tea. There is nothing inappropriate. The Marshal has no intention of keeping it secret. After all, this kind of thing cannot be kept secret. I know what can and cannot be said. Don't think too simply of me, Orgrim, Jun said very calmly. Orgrim also thought about it. If the Navy really takes action on such a big event, it can't be kept secret. Moreover, there is no need to keep the matter of moving the headquarters a secret. What is the Navy? The Navy is the dominant force on the sea. This is not a war, or a special operation such as a sneak attack, but it should be kept secret. Even if the Navy wants to do this, it must do it in an upright manner. It will even issue an announcement in advance and spread it to the world. This is the Navy's card. As for how this plan was arranged, it was definitely impossible for Jun to tell Orgrim. Orgrim didn't have the temerity to ask. So what? What are you telling me about this? Orgrim asked. Although there are no signs yet, after our Navy does this, there should be major changes, even personnel changes. After that, it was time to return to headquarters, Jun said while looking into Orgrim's eyes. Orgrim's expression was very calm. After thinking for a moment, he said, "After all, your Navy headquarters will also move to the New World. Or is it that G-5 is in the New World and there seems to be no change?" "No, there are changes." Jun shook his head first, and then said, "I am in G-5. No matter what happens, even if I happen to catch someone like Charlotte Lingling, the Yonko like you will still be the base of G-5. He's just a commander, he's still a lieutenant general." After a slight pause, Jun continued, "But it's different when my staff returns to the headquarters." "Gee, ha 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 ha, what else can I do? Could it be that you can still be a general?" Orgrim laughed. "Why is it impossible?" Jun raised his chin and said in a very confident tone. Before Orgrim could speak, Jun continued, "What? Do you think that I will be weaker than Sakaski, Kuzan, and Porisalino?" Orgrim waved his hand and said, "That's not the case." "But doesn't your Navy only have room for 3 generals? Ace is now under his control. It's still unclear whether the top war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Navy headquarters can be fought. My own arrangement for this aspect is to first make a few irrelevant decisions. They are just important chess pieces, and the real layout has not been revealed. Therefore, Orgrim is not sure whether the Sengoku will retire, whether Kuzan will have an all-out conflict with Sakaski, and 2 generals will be freed up at once. Location comes. The nature is different," Jun said perfunctorily. It was obvious that she knew some inside information, but she had no intention of telling Orgrim. Orgrim nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Jun knew it very well, and even the top brass of the Navy knew it very well. Sengoku, the General Marshal of the Navy, would not sit still for long. It's not that the Warring States Marshal's abilities are not good, or that his strength is not good. Even his age is not a problem. But Warring States is a generalissimo who has dedicated his life to the Navy and deserves respect and respect. Even if he didn't say anything explicitly, there were no signs. But most of the senior generals of the Navy understand that at the right time, the Warring States Marshal will take a step back. And he took a step back just to make a concession for the future of the Navy. Of course, it is estimated that he will not really retire and do nothing. He will probably find a suitable position to assist the new Marshal or something until the Navy's power vacuum period is smoothly passed. So you tell me this, Orgrim is still a little confused. In the past, I had the opportunity to be a general, but I rejected that opportunity. At that time, I didn't care about this at all. I even believed that only by entering the new world can the future of the Navy be changed. Now the Navy has already intended to enter the new world, and even the headquarters wants to do so. After migrating here, I have no reason to continue to resist this kind of thing. On the contrary, after sitting as the boss in G-5 for so many years, I also understand some truths. Personal strength is not enough. To defeat you, you need more than just an individual. Being powerful requires more support. Orgrim, I will become a naval admiral. I will even work towards the position of marshal. In the future, I will personally lead the Navy to defeat you, Jun said solemnly. Orgrim rubbed his head helplessly. Damn it, I thought you were going to say something big to me. That's it? What's there to say? Then I'm really looking forward to it, Orgrim said without sincerity. Well, I knew you would have such a nonchalant attitude. Anyway, I just wanted to say hello to you. Jun didn't show any surprise, he seemed to have expected Orgrim's attitude. Compared to this, I have an interesting thing that I can share with you, ha 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 ha, I wonder if Garp will be mad to death? Orgrim laughed. What's up? Jun also asked with some curiosity. What does it have to do with Garp? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 647. Even with the size of a warship, it will still feel a slight tremor when sailing on the sea. However, the rough guys in the Navy of G-5 always feel that something is wrong when they go to bed at night. Why didn't that damn Orgrim come out of the eldest sister's house? Why is this warship trembling so rhythmically today? The more I think about it, the worse it gets, and the more I think about it, the more uncomfortable it becomes. This is destined to be a sleepless night for the rough guys of the G-5 Navy. In the early morning, perhaps due to the waves, the warship bumped slightly. This made Jun, who was still sleeping, open his eyes. He reached out and touched it instinctively and found that the bed was empty. For a moment, there was some uneasiness and loss, but the next moment, it completely dissipated. This is on the sea, on her warship in Jun. That bastard Orgrim couldn't have just slipped away like he did that day, right? Sure enough, he sat up a little and looked outside, and saw Orgrim sitting on a chair not far from the boat, looking directly at him. Jun's face turned slightly red, and he pulled up his clothes to cover up his charm. Orgrim smacked his lips in displeasure and said, Tisk, I've seen everything there is to cover up. With a murderous look in his eyes, Jun reached out and grabbed the Jinpura lying on the bedside, and whispered, want to fight? You can't beat me, whether on the ground or in. When Orgrim said this, there was an evil smile on his lips. Jun laughed a little angrily and let go of Jinpura in her hand. She was just bluffing. All your gentlemanly demeanor has disappeared. Jun opened the quilt generously, picked up the clothes scattered on the side, and said while putting them on. Orgrim looked at all this with admiration, and said with a smile, gentlemanly behavior, I am. You just keep it until you don't succeed. What's more, I'm a pirate. Are all men like this? Jun asked softly after putting on his clothes. Roughly the same, Orgrim nodded. At this moment, Jun saw a cup of fresh milk placed on the bedside table, which was still steaming. She looked at the fresh milk in surprise, and then looked at it in surprise. "Watch, Orgrim. Is it graceful enough?" Orgrim asked with a smile. "Well, somewhat beyond my expectation," Jun nodded and said. "I was very curious before. Did you drink the cup of fresh milk I gave you before I left that day?" Orgrim asked with some expectation. Jun looked at Orgrim with a strange look, and then asked, "Did you put something strange in it?" As he spoke, he looked down. Orgrim's face straightened and he said, "Hey, what do you take my thoughtfulness for? Do thoughts have to be so dirty? After all, you are a righteous navy, right? You guy, you don't have any integrity worthy of my trust, do you?" Jun retorted unceremoniously. This made Orgrim a little embarrassed, as if he really wasn't. "But I think you are not such a boring person," Jun said again, and then he picked up the glass of fresh milk very naturally and drank it in one gulp. Although he didn't answer anything, Orgrim already knew the answer. There was a rare gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. "Tasty?" Orgrim asked. "Not bad," Jun smiled and nodded. "If there is a chance in the future, I can prepare it for you," Orgrim said with a grin. "Thank you very much, there won't be many opportunities anyway," Jun said with a shrug. "Hey, you damn woman, you are such a destroyer of the atmosphere." "It's finally a little warmer," Orgrim said angrily. "Who calls you a pirate and I am a navy? Seriously, Orgrim, are you interested in agreeing to what Marshal Warring States mentioned earlier?" "If you agree," when Jun said this, his face turned slightly red. After a pause, she whispered, "I can't agree to your rude request last night." Orgrim swallowed, naturally knowing what the Sengoku's request mentioned by Jun was. Disband the Warhammer pirates, retire or something like that. Even though it was impossible for Orgrim to agree to this request, he had to admit that he was a little moved. Jun is a very charming woman. And her greater charm is not how beautiful she is or how good her figure is. Stussy has this charm, Hancock also has it, no one is worse than Jun. But there was a feeling that Orgrim would never experience with Hancock and Queen Stussy. It was an inexplicable feeling of conquest. Especially on this Navy warship. Jun's identity is a candidate for Admiral of the Navy, the G-5 eldest sister who dominates the New World. And he is a pirate. This feeling cannot be explained or explained, but it is very attractive. Therefore, a beautiful woman like Jun with an aura of justice can unlock more postures and so on in the hands of evil pirates. It is impossible to say that it is unattractive and that Orgrim is not moved. But Orgrim shook his head very decisively after all and said, "It's impossible to agree." Tisk, Jun, who originally had an aura of charm, smacked his lips in displeasure upon hearing this, and all the aura of charm dissipated from his body. Seeing Jun's heartless look, Orgrim smiled and said, "Is it so real? You were the first to be real, right?" Boring man. After Jun rolled his eyes at Orgrim, he stood up and went to wash up. Orgrim was stunned when he heard this. What does this mean? Was it me who was real first? Thinking about the conversation just now, holy shit, I feel like I missed 100 million? Just now, was that dead woman seduce me? Hello? Jun, can you give me another chance? If you ask me again, I am planning to disband the Warhammer pirates, believe me, Orgrim shouted quickly. While brushing his teeth, Jun walked to the door of the bathroom, leaning against the doorframe, wearing loose pajamas. His posture was simply too seductive. Opportunities are only given once, and only to those who are prepared. "Orgrim, you are out, don't think about it again," Jun said with an evil smile on his lips. As she said that, she took a toothbrush and wiped it vigorously in her mouth twice. She was obviously gesticulating something. Her posture almost made Orgrim vomit blood. Young people will inevitably make mistakes. Please give me a chance. I want to be a good person. As a righteous navy, shouldn't we lead the world towards love and peace? Would you like to use your sense of justice? Orgrim said with great regret. It was as if he really wanted to be a good person. Jun rolled his eyes at Orgrim and without saying a word, he turned around and walked into the bathroom again to wash up. Well, the world has lost another good man, Orgrim sighed helplessly. After washing up, Jun walked out of it heroically, looked at Orgrim and asked, for the sake of the cup of fresh milk just now, what do you want for breakfast? I can prepare it for you myself. As soon as he heard the words prepare it for you personally, the figure of the queen flashed in Orgrim's mind, and he shuddered all over. Ahem, your craftsmanship, Orgrim cleared his throat and asked with some distrust. Jun picked up his cigarette from the table very naturally, bit one on his mouth, lit it, and exhaled a puff of smoke, like a big sister, and said very domineeringly, just tell me whether you want to eat it or not, right? If something goes wrong, I will also be responsible for you. That's okay, give it a try. After thinking about it for a while, Orgrim decided to give it a try. What if there is a surprise? Wait here, don't wander around on the warship, Jun nodded and said. Don't worry, I'm not bad enough to do something like this. Orgrim waved his hand very casually and said. Jun didn't give any more instructions. After nodding, he opened the cabin door and walked out. Just like Jun was in the Golden City and didn't walk more or ask more questions. Orgrim didn't intend to cause any trouble on the warship. Even as Jun, there might be some important Navy secrets on her warship. With a cigarette in her mouth, Jun headed all the way walking towards the kitchen. On the way, the G-5 Marines nodded their heads when they saw their eldest sister. However, there was a feeling of hesitation in their eyes. Jun knew in his heart that they were confused. What? But I have no intention of explaining it at all. I can give my body to whomever I like. Do you care? He took out a phone bug from his arms and recalled what Orgrim said yesterday. After thinking about it, Jun still felt that he had to tell Garp to prevent him from getting angry. Anyway, if Orgrim dared to tell her about this matter, he would definitely not care whether it was spread or not. This is also the tacit understanding between her and Orgrim. Just say, what can be said? Jun? Why are you interested in calling me? I heard what that guy from the Warring States period said. You are really brave. You are not afraid of that bastard Orgrim. As soon as Garp answered the phone, he said in a loud voice. Jun couldn't help but rolled his eyes and said, little Garp, don't worry about me about this kind of thing, okay? You are in debt yourself. Garp also smiled awkwardly when he heard this. This is true, Jun and Orgrim, alas, it's hard to put it into words. But why is it not embarrassing for me? His son became a revolutionary soldier, his grandson disappeared and became a pirate, and there was another one who was clamoring all day long about becoming a pirate king. I haven't even sorted out my debt, so how can I say anything about Jun? So what happened? Do you need my help? Garp asked. No, I heard that your grandson went to sea to become a pirate, Jun asked carelessly. With the relationship between her and Garp, there is no need to ask about this kind of thing in a roundabout way. Garp said angrily, hey, you don't want to open any pot, right? Don't you think I'm bad enough? Ha 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 ha, it seems to be true. He is missing, right? Can't find it? Jun asked again. Garp was stunned for a moment, then he seemed to have come to his senses and asked, do you know the news, that bastard arrived in the New World so quickly? Caught by you? Not really, but I do have some bad news that I want to tell you, Jun grinned and said with a wicked smile. Garp quickly asked what news? Ace, your grandson seems to have joined the Warhammer pirates. Well, not really. In short, he is going to hang out with Orgrim's son. You will be in trouble in the future, ha 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 ha, Jun said with a smile. Garp. Why are you laughing? Is this something funny? Where are you, Jun? But before he could speak, Jun hung up the phone. Insect. Hello? Hello? Please speak clearly. Is this dead? Garp looked at the phone bug in bewilderment. This bastard Jun's habit of hanging up the phone has really not changed at all. Then he thought about the revelation that Jun gave him just now. Ace, hanging out with that bastard son of Orgrim? This is crazy. Garp feels like his heart is blocked, a mouthful of old blood is stuck in your throat, and you feel like you want to spit it out but can't. This news, it's better to just die, Garp cursed angrily. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 648. Eternal Night Sea Avalon. Beckman was looking for something in a collection room filled with rare treasures. Ah, there it is, Reiju is here, no need to look for it. After Beckman opened a small cabinet, he looked at the devil fruits inside and said with a smile. Not far away, Reiju, who was also helping Beckman rummage, stopped what he was doing after hearing this. He ran to Beckman's side, looked at it, and asked, "Is this the natural type xiao fruit?" "Well, that's right. It's been there for so many years and I almost can't find it anymore," Beckman nodded. Holding the xiao fruit, Beckman and Reiju walked out of the collection room. At this time, at the door of the collection room, Aaron was standing there with Ace and Nami. Ace's expression didn't change at all, and he stood quietly aside. Nami's eyes were rolling. It was obvious that she wanted to see what treasures were hidden in the Warhammer Pirates collection room. You know, the Warhammer Pirates are famous for being rich and arrogant. The things collected by them must be quite valuable, right? They must all be treasures of the sea. After a while, Beckman and Reiju came out and said with a smile, "I kept you waiting for a long time. There are too many things in there. I can't find where to put this thing." While Beckman was speaking, he was still weighing the burning fruit in his hand. Ace's eyes were all attracted to the burning fruit. The moment he saw the burning fruit, he had an inexplicable feeling, throbbing, as if this fruit should belong to his ability. "I was still a little hesitant at first, hesitating about whether to become an ability user or something. But now, this hesitation has dissipated. He wants to become a natural type person with the burning fruit ability and open the door to the strong." "Thank you, Mr. Beckman," Aaron said with a smile. "What's the trouble here? Has Orgrim arrived in Marijoya?" "Why, no news," Beckman waved his hand first, and then asked. "Judging from the voyage, Lord Orgrim should have arrived in Marijoya long ago, but, at present, it seems that it has not arrived yet." Aaron shook his head and said. The three of them all rushed back to Avalon from the Golden City. "It seems that Master Chui has not arrived at Marijoya. This sounds a bit strange, but when you think about Master Chui coming to Jun, if that guy is together, it doesn't seem strange anymore. They must be in no hurry. I'm not sure what island I passed by on the way, and I would like to visit it." "Forget it, that guy is definitely not in any danger. He probably has some trouble with that Jun." Beckman smiled and shook his head. Aaron also showed a smile that all men understand, nodded, and said, "I think so too." "Ha ha 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 ha," Beckman laughed. At this moment, two more figures came running not far away. Well, it should be considered one. Because these two figures are stacked on top of each other. "Come on, Ziope. The goal is close at hand." Runty was grabbing Peggy Wan's hair and yelling excitedly. Peggy Wan's words were just as Lucci told him that time. He has now become an animal-type ability user. And it is really the ability of the spiny-back dragon. Although he has not completely transformed into a beast, at this time, he is running in a half-dragon posture, with Runty riding on his shoulders. "You should come down and run by yourself," Peggy Wan complained and yelled. "I'm going to ride you," Runty said regardless. During the commotion, Runty and Peggy Wan had already arrived. Beckman said with some humor, "Oh, you two are still so energetic." Runty jumped off Peggy Wan and said coaxingly, "Today is another day full of energy." "Mr. Beckman, I'm not energetic at all," Peggy said helplessly. "Ha ha ha ha, Runty, why are you here?" Raju asked happily. "Oh, Raju, you are indeed getting together with Boss Beckman again. As for me, I heard that two partners are coming to go to sea with us, so I came here to have a look." Runty first greeted Raju, then focused on Ace and Nami. After sizing them up, she asked excitedly, "Are those two of you? The genius navigator and the dishwasher?" Ace: "Genius navigator, I know that Nami is indeed very good at this aspect. But what the hell is washing dishes? Isn't that too rude? My name is Nami and I am a navigator. Please give me your advice, senior." Nami said hello to Runty with a smile on her face. "Senior?" Runty's expression suddenly became happy, and she said happily, "Yes, yes, I am a senior." "Humph, you are welcome to Avalon. If you don't understand anything, feel free to ask me. My name is Runty." "My name is Ace, Portkas D. Ace, it's the one who washes the dishes," Ace said angrily. Runty glanced at Ace, curled her lips and said, "It's not that good, it's not as cute as my Siope." "Hey, sister, isn't that too rude?" Peggy Wan said quickly, and then said to Ace with some embarrassment, "I'm sorry, Ace, my sister has this annoying temper." "Ah, fine." Ace scratched his head and said with a smile. "Well, in short, I will be the one covering you two from now on, ha 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 ha." Runty laughed and said. Nami rolled her eyes a little, then nodded immediately and said, "Then it all depends on you, Senior Runty." "Well, don't worry," Runty said happily. Ace said helplessly, "I don't need you to cover me." "What did you say?" The grumpy Runty came online immediately. "I said, I don't need you to cover me, I can protect myself," Ace replied unceremoniously. "You arrogant bastard," Runty cursed with some annoyance, and then her aura changed and said, "It seems that I want to teach you a lesson, so that you know who is the boss here." As soon as he finished speaking, Runty exerted force on his feet and headed towards Ace. "Hit him." Runty's head, but Runty shouted with a low voice. "Esco has just arrived and has no ability to protect himself." "Runty, please stop fooling around," Beckman said with a smile. At the same time, he reached out and grabbed Ace's shoulder, pulling Ace directly to his side. The next moment, Runty hit the wall behind Ace's original position. The thick wall was directly hit by Runty, causing two cracks. The fine cracks spread like spider webs. Nami was also startled at this time. "What kind of monsters are these? This wall is definitely quite thick. I'm afraid even cannonballs can't break the wall, right?" As a result, this little girl who looked very cute smashed the wall with one head. Ace was also shocked at this time. He was not surprised at all that the Warhammer pirates would be very powerful. But for people of the same age, it shouldn't be too outrageous, right? But now, his thoughts have completely dissipated. How is it not outrageous? It's simply outrageous. What kind of head is this? So hard? If Mr. Beckman hadn't helped to pull him out of the way just now, he would probably have been seriously injured, right? Runty pulled out his head from the wall at this time and asked with a somewhat surprised expression, "Don't you know how to do anything like domineering and iron?" Ace was stunned for a moment, and Nami quickly said, "No, we can't do anything." "Tisk, I told you earlier, I thought you were somewhat capable, and you almost got into big trouble." "Feel sorry." Runty smacked her lips at first, and then apologized naturally. Ace: "I thought this woman named Runty was the kind of irritable and arrogant woman, but I didn't expect that she would also apologize. In fact, Runty also did the same. There was a misunderstanding. She thought that the person Orgrim was interested in and the person he arranged to come would be somewhat capable, So she didn't have too much scruples about taking action. The result was good, they were two completely newbies. Then such nonsense is a bit too much, because if you are not careful, you will really get killed, or at worst, seriously injured. This nature is different. Although she is irritable, she is not that over the top. Unreasonable. Ah, what then, it doesn't matter, Ace said with some embarrassment. Hey, if you become my little brother, I can teach you many skills. Domineering, six style, Runty fluid technique, I can teach you everything. Runty raised her chin and said seductively. Ace scratched his head a little and said, what about that? Before I came here, I had already taken refuge with Sister Sphinx. The Sphinx did not follow him back from the Golden City, and Ace raised her banner without hesitation. However, this was not a lie. After all, the Sphinx did say that Ace was hers. It's considered to have taken refuge in the Sphinx, isn't it? Runty was stunned for a moment, and then said with some regret, they are from the Sphinx, so it's really hard to take action. She and the Sphinx are two devils in the world. They have such a good relationship, so naturally they can't just rob people. Ha 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 ha, okay, you are now a little familiar with each other, Runty. Is Lucci on the island? Beckman asked. Have no idea. Runty said without thinking. Peggy Wands quickly said yes, Senior Lucci is on the island. Well, that's good. Beckman nodded first, and then continued in this way, Aaron and Nami will be left to Runty and Yamato. As for Ace, you take him to Lucci, and ask Lucci to be responsible for teaching Ace. Yes, Lord Beckman Long nodded quickly and said. Beckman nodded, then handed the Sheishuo fruit in his hand to Ace and said, although this thing has been gathering dust here for a long time, I have to say that this is a powerful ability. Don't let it down Orgrim's expectations for you, Ace. Ace reached out and took the Xiao fruit. Feeling the weight of the fruit, Ace nodded seriously and said, Mr. Beckman, I will definitely live up to these expectations. Very good, you just have to be so confident. Beckman smiled. After a slight pause, he said again, by the way, Andre is very strong, if you want to defeat him and become the captain, you have to practice hard. Defeat Andre? Runty glanced at Ace in surprise, then laughed and said no, you can't even beat me, how can you beat Andre, that guy is very strong. Ace said helplessly, just because I can't beat you now, doesn't mean I won't be able to beat you in the future. Just wait and see. Let's not talk about undressed. I will definitely become stronger than you. Yeah, a smile appeared on the corner of Runty's mouth, then she turned her hands into fists and punched her chest. Then I will wait for you to become stronger. Beckman looked at the scene and smiled with some relief. Although we will become companions on the same boat in the future, it is a good thing that there is such competitiveness among companions. Andre, you have a good group of friends. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 649. Holy Land Marijoa. In the World Government Headquarters building. After entering the special elevator, Orgrim pulled off his black robe. This is really an annoying thing. I don't like to hide my head and show my bottom. I really don't know when I will be able to come to Marijoa for tea in an open and honest manner. Orgrim handed the black robe in his hand to Junrod, who was following him. Jun stretched out his hand to take the black robe very naturally, smiled and said, it's impossible. With your status, you will never have the chance to board Marijoa openly. No matter how the darkness and light are intertwined, at least on the surface. Above, it's very clear. That's really sad. Orgrim curled his lips and said. Soon, the elevator reached the top floor. There was no need for Jun to take him with him. Orgrim was already familiar with this place. He stepped out of the elevator and arrived in a short while. In front of a door. He raised his hand and knocked casually, and the answer from Wulaoxing came from inside. "You don't go in." Orgrim looked at Jun and asked. "No, I'm not interested. Anyway, I don't have access to the things you want to talk about." Jun shook his head and said. "Okay, then please wait for me outside, I still need you to take me back." Orgrim smiled and said. Jun nodded and said, "Okay." Last time, Orgrim came on a Jun warship. But when he left mysteriously and secretly disappeared from Marijoya. But this time, there is no need for that. You can definitely take the boat back to Jun, and still enjoy yourself. Without saying anything more, after nodding to Jun, Orgrim opened the door and walked in. As soon as he entered, he looked at the 5 elders. The stars were all looking at me with smiles. The bald king guy was sitting in front of the sofa, making tea skillfully. "It's been a while since I last saw you, but you're still so energetic." "Orgrim, come and have some tea." The bald king smiled and said hello. Orgrim also smiled, took off the war hammer he brought behind him, and placed it on the wall at the door. This time, when he did this action, the 5 old stars didn't even move their faces. Obviously, the trust relationship between the two parties has been strengthened a lot. "Golden City has opened, how is it going?" the bearded man asked with a smile. "It's definitely nice to be crowded." Orgrim sat down next to the bald king, picked up a cup of tea from the table, and drank it directly. "That's really good news, it looks like we'll make a lot of money too." The bearded man nodded and said with satisfaction. "This quarter, we will first test the water with 200 billion belly to see if the Golden City can be cleaned up." The blonde man also followed suit. "Are you too petty? You spent tens of trillions and 10 trillions in Bihai, but the Golden City only washed away 200 billions? Orgrim joked with a smile. "Ha ha 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 ha, let's test the waters first. Safety is the most important thing. What if the amount is too big and Orgrim takes advantage of it?" The bald king also laughed and said. "You guys are really, ha 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 ha, if there were tens of trillions, I might be very excited." Orgrim also joked. "It seems that your son is in Bihai now? Are you ready to let him go to sea?" the blonde man asked suddenly. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, touched his chin and said, "Do you all know this? After all, he is your son." "Orgrim, we should be concerned to some extent," the bald king said while drinking tea. "That's true, that boy has reached the age of going to sea. I can't keep suppressing him. When the time comes, please take care of him." Orgrim didn't care about anything and said it very naturally. Andrest's whereabouts were kept secret, but they were kept secret. But it's really not a big secret. If the 5 old stars want to know, it's not too difficult to know in one sentence. After chatting casually for a while, the bald king asked again, "Crocodile entered the new world and went to the Golden City to visit you?" "It's a visit," Orgrim first corrected him, then with a playful smile on his lips, he said the ancient weapon, Pluto, was resurrected in his hands. Tisk tisk, it's really a dangerous thing, don't you feel uneasy? If he ever has a mental problem one day, he can hit Marijoa with one shot." "Marijoa, it's not that simple," Orgrim big bearded Ruo said with deep meaning. "Yeah," Orgrim touched his chin, thoughtfully. "The Holy Land, Marijoa, has stood on the Red Earth continent for 800 years. The water here is obviously very deep. Orgrim has been here before. Several times, but still can't get to the bottom of it. As the central organization of the world government, the defense force here should be extremely powerful. But what is a bit embarrassing is that Orgrim once set off a riot here, and even destroyed the void. The throne was given. Fisher Tiger once set off a riot here, liberated a large number of slaves, and almost burned Marijoa to white clay. This made it seem that Marijoa had no idea at all. It's like there is no resistance. Anyone who comes here can press Marie-Joy to the ground and rub her. But at this time, the 5 old stars are not worried at all. Marie-Joy will be beaten by Crocodile. Guys, give it a shot. Orgrim didn't know whether this was a pretense, but he believed it was probably not the case. But why? He had doubts in his heart, but it was obvious that Wulaoxing would not give him an answer even if he took the wrong medicine. As for those ancient weapons, Neptune is okay, Pluto is just so. The bearded man thought for a while and said nonchalantly. Sure enough, for you, ancient weapons are just a cover? A pretense used to scare the world and avoid the spread of ancient texts, Orgrim asked with a smile. The bald king shook his head and said that's not the case. Maybe there is such a factor, but it's not the case. At least a few hundred years ago, Pluto was still very threatening, but now, putting Pluto aside, Uranus, king of heaven, and Poseidon, king of Neptune, both have very terrifying power. Once something goes wrong, we will be under great pressure, and the whole world will also be affected. It's very bad pressure, Orgrim speculated in his mind. Even the resurrection of ancient weapons is nothing more than pressure. It seems that the 5 old stars still have a trump card. I had slightly suspected before that King Auranos, the most mysterious ancient weapon, might be in the hands of the world government. Even, right here in Marie-Joy. But listening to what Wulaoxing just said, it doesn't seem to be the case. But Orgrim couldn't draw conclusions so casually. These 5 old guys were all very good at talking. How could they casually reveal clues? Perhaps, what they said just now was to mislead themselves, not necessarily, to rule out the possibility that one of the ancient weapons was in their hands. In short, just listen to these things. You still have to think for yourself. You can't be led astray by these 5 old guys. I thought that Crocodile would have any conflict with you when he entered the new world. But now it seems that you have a lot of face. That guy went to visit you immediately, you didn't plan to do anything to him. He will definitely challenge your power and status in the pirate camp, so don't take it to heart, the bald king said earnestly. There was a hint of concern in and out of his words. It was as if he was afraid that Orgrim would be tricked by Crocodile. Orgrim took another sip from the teacup. He glanced at the bald king and said, "Don't fix these messy things for me, okay? Are you kidding me? Are you looking down on me? Ha 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 ha, have you been spotted?" The bald king laughed and said. "After all, we pirates are different from your world government. We cannot have only one voice and one mountaintop." Orgrim said very calmly. The bald king said as if Orgrim would be able to sit back and relax as long as he killed Crocodile. But in fact, that is not the case at all. Pirates and the world, the biggest difference between governments is that pirates are always loose. It is impossible to centralize power to one voice. New pirates are born all over the world every moment. At the same time, among these pirates in the new world, new careerists will continue to emerge. These people, after entering the new world, no matter how they start, will more or less challenge the kingship after they become stronger. Just like Crocodile. In other words, for example, even if Orgrim kills Crocodile now, a new Crocodile will still be born before long, and the cycle will repeat. This is why Orgrim is willing to keep one, for him the reason why the Yonko pattern is said to be dispensable in terms of value. Because there are a few more big pirates who seem to be of the same level as himself. He will have a lot less troubles. He will not be as ambitious as those who are ambitious. They all pointed their fingers at themselves and looked for trouble for themselves every day. Now, in the Four Emperors structure, it goes without saying that Kaido is a serious member of his own family. Whitebeard is also willing to admit defeat. Considering his age, it was hard for Grimm to imagine that he would still confront him. There was no need for this. The two sides also left behind this friendship in that battle. Then, Crocodile is the only one left. If Crocodile comes up, if he fell out with Orgrim, then Orgrim would definitely clean up Crocodile in one fell swoop. But Crocodile didn't. He was willing to surrender to Orgrim despite his lack of strength. Mew. This is enough. If he is still obedient, Orgrim can keep him to plug the gap of those ambitious people. Otherwise, kill Crocodile and replace him with a disobedient one, Orgrim. We still have to keep doing it. Now we are once again involved in the internal disputes of the pirates. This makes no sense. Therefore, the Yonko pattern is a means used by Orgrim to stabilize the internal situation of the pirates. Crocodile it is also part of this method. With these big pirates around, Orgrim can take a break from these endless challengers and plan how to deal with the world government and navy. What the 5 old stars said, is nothing more than trying to fool Orgrim and kill Crocodile. In this way, the threat of ancient weapons should be gone. After all, even if Crocodile destroys Hades, he will not leave it to Orgrim. Yes, and Crocodile is gone, the pirate camp may be in chaos again, which is a good thing for the world government. Of course, this method is too superficial, but it is not troublesome, just a sentence. What if it succeeds? But it is obvious that Orgrim does not accept this trick at all. Okay, let's not talk about such insignificant things. The bearded man came out with a smile to smooth things over. Yes, it's an insignificant thing. For the 5 old stars and Orgrim, Crocodile, it's really not that important. Remember, last time I said that when you come again, I will tell you an interesting story, the bald king asked. Orgrim grinned and said with a smile, of course you remember. After all, I like to listen to stories the most. I came here specifically to listen to stories. Ha ha ha, okay, this story is a long one, the bald king smiled. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 650. 800 years ago, 20 kings formed a coalition. After the coalition defeated a certain enemy, it did not disband. The 20 kings decided to form a brand new government. This is the origin of the world government, the bald king said softly. Orgrim nodded, then pretended to be very natural and asked, who is this enemy? An enemy is, when the bald king said this, he suddenly smiled, looked at Orgrim and said, are you looking down on me? Gee ha 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 ha, how is that possible? What you said, I have always respected you, right? I still have your portrait at home, really, Orgrim laughed and said. You don't need to ask more about who the enemy is. It's all dust of history anyway. The bald king ignored Orgrim's naughty words and continued. What I hate the most is your kind of storytelling. Half of the stories you tell are already dust and are still hidden, Orgrim complained first. Then he asked 20 kings. The Nefertali clan who was killed by Crocodile were also involved. Participated, but something else happened later. The Nefertali clan did not choose to cooperate with the other 19 kings, and returned to Alabasta with some other thoughts. Therefore, the celestial dragons, the second in theory, there are 20 families descended from the 10 kings, but in fact, there are only 19 families in this regard. The bald king did not hide anything. After a slight pause, the bald king said, in your eyes, the world government is degenerate and corrupt, right? Orgrim took a sip from the teacup and said matter-of-factly, isn't this natural, more than in my eyes? In the eyes of many people, this is the case, right? How did you become a revolutionary soldier? But unlike those people who are making revolution, I like your world government very much, gee ha 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 ha. Yes, I have to admit that today's world government is really degenerate and decadent, the bald king said with some emotion. But before Orgrim could speak, the bald king continued, but in fact, 800 years ago, the original intention of 20 kings to create the world government was beautiful and kind, and they wanted to give the world bringing order and peace, hoping to mediate and reverse conflicts among countries with the world government as the center, some type of. On this point, Orgrim has no doubts. In essence, regardless of factors such as corruption, the structure of the world government does have this function, and it is also very powerful. But when the power becomes huge and no one can check and balance, everything changes. The throne of the void was the beautiful expectation of the 20 kings for the world at the beginning, but there, it finally became a dictatorial throne, and Lord I'm appeared, the bald king said softly. In other words, changed. The bald king thought for a while and added another sentence. Orgrim said with a glint in his eyes, is he one of the 20 kings? Is this weird? The bald king did not deny anything, and asked very calmly. Orgrim smiled, waved his hands and said, I am just a little surprised, but in fact, there is nothing strange. Sure enough, as the rumors say, then the guy gained the power of immortality as a result of the surgery, right? That's right, the bald king nodded and said. At that time, no one knew about this. No one knew that Lord Im had gained eternal life. Maybe, does Nefertali know? Maybe this is the reason why they chose to leave, the bald king thought for a while and said. With the passage of time, the remaining 18 kings gradually became history, but Lord Im was still alive. During this period, due to his specialness and status, he continued to concentrate power in the world government. In his own hands, the navy was also established at that stage, which further exploited the military strength and power of the participating countries, and at the same time contributed to the fundamental strength of the world government, the blond man said softly at this time. Orgrim couldn't help but nodded. He has long known that the origin of the navy was probably formed after the formation of the world government. This point can also be traced back to the source. Most of the history of the navy is presented quite normally. And there is nothing wrong with what the blond man said about being fundamentally strong. If we say that without a powerful violent institution like the navy, the overlord of the sea, the world government would only be an empty shell in name only. There should be some influence, but it will never be as big as it is now. The world government with its navy can defeat all countries in the world and use powerful armed forces to ensure the deterrence of the world government. Political power, wealth power, and military power were all concentrated in this organization called the world government. We don't know what happened at that time, but from here, it is enough to see the skill of Lord Im. How superb, Big Beard said with some emotion. Orgrim nodded in approval, although he didn't know how the boss Im did it. But the facts are before our eyes. The world government is now a behemoth that combines these three forces into one. According to our investigation, it was not that no one resisted at first, but in the end, what was passed down was the world government, the bald king said again. We can be regarded as receiving this kind of favor, the highest power in the world, ha ha ha, the bearded man smiled again. I don't know if he was laughing at himself or what he was doing. At that time, the world government was celebrating that we had become the most powerful and stable organization in the world, and the fall should have started from that time, as Dirac said in his book System and Change. Once power loses its checks and balances and degenerates, it will make people feel despair and terror, the bald king smiled and said. Orgrim looked at the 5 old stars with some surprise, and asked, do you also read that guy Dirac's book? To defeat your opponent, you must first understand your opponent, let alone Dirac. If Orgrim publishes a book one day and writes an autobiography or something, no matter how bad the writing is, we will grit our teeth and read it, or even study it many times. The bald king joked with a smile. After listening to what you said, it's even more impossible for me to write this kind of thing, Orgrim laughed and said. Lord Im's methods are extremely superb. After realizing this, he not only did not restrain himself, but intensified his efforts, taking the exploitation and oppression to the extreme. At the same time, he had to admit that thanks to him, the government was also extremely powerful, and at that time, the yoke of the navy was tightly wrapped around its neck. The bald king stopped talking nonsense to Orgrim and started telling the story again. A glimmer of understanding flashed in Orgrim's eyes. Before the bald king could speak again, Orgrim grinned and said when everything was caught in his hands, he died, right? There was a hint of surprise in the bald king's eyes, and he said incredulously, I didn't expect you could think of this. Don't treat me like an idiot, okay? Orgrim couldn't help but complained again. No, this is really a compliment to you. At first, we secretly investigated for a long time before we understood this, but you thought of it as soon as you heard it, the bald king said with some emotion. I always feel like Orgrim is really becoming more and more evil, right? Orgrim is a bit funny. Is this the difference between the times? If he had grown up completely in this world, he might also be confused about this kind of thing. However, in his previous life, the country he was in had a history of 5,000 years of civilization. What weird things didn't happen? It's only 800 years, which is the Zhou dynasty. After concentrating all the contradictions, grudges, darkness, and hatred on himself, Lord Im died. The bald king nodded. Orgrim was really not surprised at all. This was indeed a routine operation. Fake death. We internally believe that perhaps during this period, Lord Im is still not completely corrupted. All he has done is to make the world government larger and more deterrent. At the same time, facts have also proved that in the more than 200 years after this period, almost all areas under the rule of the world government were in a period of peace, and the development of various countries was advancing rapidly under the control of the world government, the bearded man added. Orgrim nodded again, not doubting anything. This sounded a bit like the Soviet Union, but it was better than the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is lame and has strong external opponents, but the world government is fully developed and has no opponents. When Lord Im died, the previous grudges, hatreds, and conflicts disappeared, but the world government did not return the power that had been snatched. The bald king took a sip of tea and said calmly, "Gee ha 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 ha, if it were me, I wouldn't give it back, what? Could it be that you will return it?" Orgrim laughed. "Of course it's impossible," the bald king said without hesitation. "Even if he knew that this might bring about an imbalance of power, it is absolutely impossible to give back the power he has gained. This is the poison of power. The deceased Lord Yumul had arranged everything before his death. On the surface, the world government had restored order and was no longer a dictatorship. But in fact, the 5 old stars of the past generations had always been with Yumul, under the control of the adults, and as time goes by, this control and deterrence become more and more intense. I am not afraid to tell you that in the past 800 years, there should be no voices of resistance, but after all, these lights were all extinguished by Lord Im, who secretly controlled everything," the bearded man said in a deep voice. "Are you this new voice?" Orgrim smiled and said, "Maybe, but I have nothing to hide from you." "We are also here for power," Big Beard said without hesitation. "Honest?" Orgrim nodded and said, "Maybe it's been too long, and Lord Im seems to have lost interest in this game. In our era, he rarely manages the affairs of the world government. In fact, although we still have there is Im Sama, but it is not unreasonable to say that we are the supreme power. The last time Im Sama paid attention to the world government was during the time of One Piece Roger." The bald king smiled and said, "Although we would go to say hello at every world conference, Sir Im had no interest in participating." The bearded man also said the same thing. "In other words, you can see Lord Im at any time?" Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. "No," the bald king shook his head and continued, "it's Lord Im, who can see us at any time. In fact, we don't know much about him, but what is certain is that most of the time, he is not at Mary Jo Ya. It's just that during the World Conference, I will come back and take a look. It's just a look." Orgrim's eyes changed a little, and he asked, "If this is really the case, you don't have to, conspiracy. Sitting in our position, can you bear it, with a knife hanging over your head that can kill you at any time?" "Orgrim," the blond man asked in a deep voice. Gee ha 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 ha, I see. Orgrim smiled and said. What's more, this knife is moody. Maybe one day, on a whim, it will deprive us of everything we have out of incomprehensible thoughts like interesting. Who can bear this feeling? The bald king also followed suit. So you will definitely unite with me, the hammer, to smash, this knife? Orgrim asked with an evil smile on his lips. That's right, the bald king said very firmly.